Hello and welcome to another episode of The Partial Historians. I am Dr. Radness.
Hello, Dr. Radness. I am Dr. Greenfield.
Well, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Really?
Would you care to join me on a journey through the history of Rome from the founding of the city until such a time as we call it fit?
Well, yes, I would. From the founding of the city. This is a process we've been on for a little way now. We're really quite early in the project.
We really are, yes. So at the moment it's just from the founding of the city, I think it's safe to say. And if I might, before we get started this week, I would like to dedicate this episode.
A dedication,
I
you
would.
say?
I
oh,
would.
Goodness. This is special.
Yes.
Hold up, listeners.
Yes.
Maybe it's you.
Not to anyone terribly specific, but perhaps I might be dedicating it to people of the male persuasion who might live somewhere on the North Shore and maybe of teenage years. I'm not going to say any more than that.
Hello. Where does one... I have so many questions.
Yeah.
Let's just leave it at this
male
viewers, listeners, peoples.
Yes, this episode is dedicated to you. And this episode, Dr. G, focuses on another king of Rome.
What?
I know. Might surprise you to learn this, but we are still in the regal period.
What?
To be precise, 616 BC.
Yes. The previous episode, we ended on a bit of a cliffhanger.
We did.
Yeah.
Ancus Marcus is not dead as yet, as far as we're concerned.
Not according to where we finished the last episode.
No.
But you'll be surprised to learn, dear listeners, that pretty much he's now dead.
Yes. The imminent death of this eminent person.
Yeah, so the narrative where we were up to was that Ancus Marcius has sort of become friends with this upstart young import into Rome.
Tisk.
Guy named styled himself Tarquinius.
Etruscan trash. That's what it is. Etruscan trash.
Yeah. No, but you know, if you can play a good game, you're charismatic.
And he had been playing quite a good game during Ancus's reign. He had sort of become quite friendly with the king, putting himself in quite a good position.
Yeah, to the point where he's become the guardian of Ancus's children in Ancus's will.
Absolutely. And so upon Ancus's death, and he reigned for about 24 years, actually I believe the shortest reign of all our Roman kings, according to our most reliable sources.
Just a quick snap of the 24 years, you know.
Why, that's how old I am. No time at all.
So you say.
Yeah.
So you say.
Maybe just reverse those numbers. Anywho, yes. So basically, Ancus dies, much revered. His sons were of an age that technically they might have been thinking power. They may have.
Yes. They weren't that young.
No.
Once Ancus died, they possibly were contenders, but they were in the guardianship of Tarquinius.
Yes, and Tarquinius, as we've seen, is quite the operator.
Yes.
And so basically, Tarquinius decides that since the sons are almost of an age where they might be becoming a threat perhaps to his
might
ambitions.
be becoming a little bit ambitious themselves.
Yes, exactly.
He decides that what they need to do is go off on a hunting trip.
Yes, because he's going to call a meeting.
You guys, you love hunting. And they're like, oh yeah,
we love hunting. Let's go hunting. Yes, exactly.
So you guys go hunting.
Yes.
And while they're away,
the mice will play.
Tarquinius quickly calls a meeting of the Comitia.
Yes, and
Get together, guys. We need to choose a new king.
Yes, exactly. And apparently he is the first to sort of basically campaign for the kingship.
Yeah. This is the first, according to Livy.
Yes.
This is the first guy who actually campaigns for the kingship.
And why would we ever doubt anything Livy says?
Well,
yes. Sorry, it's a rhetorical question.
That's a story for another day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so he basically delivers this speech where he's trying to win people over.
Yeah, because it's pretty clear that there's like this nice sort of dynastic line.
Yeah, all set up and ready to go.
It's all there, guys. You know, just to make those boys choose one of them, make them king.
Yeah.
Although, ostensibly, this is not how kingship has worked.
No.
In Rome from the founding of the city.
God damn it. Where is the interregnum?
Yeah. I mean, but Tarquinius, you know, he makes some really good points. He gets up, makes a really nice speech, and he's like, Rome has a tradition of foreign kings. So point one, it's like, this is not a dynastic thing, guys, so don't even worry about it.
It's not even a Roman thing.
Huh. Yeah. Have you thought about people like Tatius? Have you thought about people like Numa? And he's like, he also says things like, I've lived in Rome for so long.
Yeah,
it's
like,
I've built my whole life here, guys.
Yeah.
It's like, check
And not
out
only
the
that,
dedication.
I totally learnt from the best. You all love Ancus. I love Ancus. In fact, Ancus taught me everything I know.
Yeah, and this is amazing. He's like, look, I've learned from the best. I learned from the king. Everything I know about Roman law, everything I know about like rights to do with religious process. He's like, come on, you've got to give me some mad respect.
You want a connection with the previous king? Look no further. We were practically brothers.
I've got a lot going in my favour.
Yes, and the people say, sure.
We
can get on that band.
Right.
Yep,
yeah,
absolutely.
Like what you hear, like what you're saying. I hear it. But this is not as smooth sailing as it might initially appear.
The surprise is there.
The first thing that Tarquinius does, he's like, okay, I'm king. He adds 100 new members to the Senate.
Now would these conveniently be people who were on his side?
Yes. These people are known as the fathers of the lesser families. Ouch.
Way to go down in history, guys.
Yeah. You're in the Senate, but you're in the lesser part of the Senate.
Don't you be getting above yourself.
Yeah. This is typically read across the board as an admission that the Senate ultimately didn't really approve of Tarquinius' election. He's elected by the people, not the Senate.
Yeah. But he does still have this group of people now in the Senate who are all like, woo!
Woo!
Woo! Every time he says something.
I'm a yes man.
Exactly.
For Tarquinius.
Yes.
Yeah, so he goes about this sort of process, allows him to sort of remove senatorial opposition by just sort of quelling the numbers a little bit.
Yeah, just stacking things in his favour, basically.
Flood some new men in there. Very convenient.
Very smart, yes. I like this guy. He's
a savvy political operator.
He really
Look at him go.
And he's also warlike.
Oh, yeah. Well, in the tradition of Roman kingship,
well, of course.
Perhaps unsurprising, he decides it's time to go to war.
Yeah. Against the Latins. The Latins.
Yes, very exciting.
Yes.
And you know that things are either not important or uncontroversial from a Roman historian's perspective when Livy doesn't give you any details about the battle.
Yeah. Pretty much smackdown. Yeah.
Yeah. Goes to war against the Latins, victory.
Yeah.
Sweet as.
Not only that, he gets even more booty than expected, apparently. So much so that he's like, you know what? Maybe we should set up some games. In fact, let's have an area. Maybe we'll call it Circus Maximus, perhaps. Something.
We're starting to see the growth of the city in various ways.
Yes.
The institution of games that will now be annual, apparently.
Yeah. And apparently, while he's establishing these new grounds for games in the Circus Maximus, he also decides that some people are going to sit there, some people are going to sit there. And when I say some people, I mean like the senators sit there and the knights sit there. La la la. We're going to divide this society.
It's all about the details, you know. It's one thing to have a Circus Maximus, but where are we going to sit,
Exactly,
guys?
Yes. Detail. Fine eye for detail. Mark of a good king.
He gets involved in some building works as well.
Yes,
during this
apparently
period.
he did.
Yeah.
Indeed. Sorry, you go ahead.
Why, thank you. Feel free to jump in. He does allocate, he sort of divides up the forum into sections and basically allots them to private citizens and says it's your responsibility to do it up.
Yeah. Again, clever.
Civic responsibility, the duty of all good citizens. And he also covers walkways.
Nice. The hot Roman sun.
Yeah, and, the marshy rainy weather.
Yeah, I like it. And apparently he also started building a stone wall to go around the city, but perhaps did not quite finish it.
Yeah, there was a slight interruption to the wall building around the city.
It was damn Sabines again.
Yeah.
It's always the same people.
Well, they've got a big chip on their shoulder, let's face it.
Yeah, so the Romans are apparently somewhat taken aback by this attack by the Sabines.
Oh, yeah. Surprise.
Yeah.
Why would they attack us?
We never did anything to them. What the hell?
Yeah, but the Sabines managed to surprise them. They crossed the Anio, which is one of the major tributaries of the Tiber, before Rome is able to mobilize their own forces.
Yeah.
And everybody in Rome just goes into panic mode.
Yeah. But they don't apparently win, this amazing victory or anything, even though the Romans weren't prepared.
Yeah. The first battle is indecisive.
Yeah.
the Sabines retreat, and the Romans are sort of like, okay, let's bunker down and get organised here.
Yeah, let's get some cavalry.
Yeah, Tarquinius has this grand idea that what he really needs is cavalry.
That will win the day, for sure.
And he's got this other idea about what would be nice is if he could add some sentries to the ones that were created by Romulus.
Nice.
So, and these are the sorts of details that, pop up every now and then.
Yeah.
Romulus apparently has created some sentries.
Yeah.
So
this guy decides, let's double those.
Yeah, which is interesting because the numbers don't make any sense if we don't think about sentry as equaling 100, because it really doesn't.
No.
It equals in some cases 80 and in other cases 300, and it really depends on which centuries we're talking about. But Livy rarely clarifies which ones we're really
it's hard for us
talking
to keep
about.
track too.
So the numbers are a little bit.
People. Yeah, we're not numbers people.
Do I look like a mathematician?
Exactly. Yes. All we need to know right now is that they were doubled.
Well, importantly, so Tarquinius is like, yeah, I'd like to have some more centuries.
Yes.
And this is important, and he wants to distinguish these centuries with his name in various ways.
Yeah.
This runs aground with the religious folk. We have Navius, Attius Navius, one of the augurs,
right? Yeah.
comes out and says, "Oh no, there can be no changes to the centuries unless we get the appropriate signals from the birds."
Ah, yes, and this doesn't entirely go off without a hitch either, does it?
So Tarquinius is like, I could wait patiently for the right bird signals, or...
Excellent.
Well, no, but this is a really exciting moment in augural history, and this is one of the moments in the narrative of Livy for which Tarquinius is relatively famous, because he gets a bit antsy about this stuff.
Yeah.
So he goes to the augur, he was like, all right, let's do a bit of a test of augury, shall we?
Yeah.
And he's like, what am I thinking can come to pass? Tell me what I'm thinking. Like, can you guess? And and so Attius, the augur, takes the auspices. So he basically kills a bird, has a look at the entrails.
Yummy. I'm a vegetarian.
And he says, what you're thinking will surely come to pass. To which Tarquinius very cleverly replies, well, I don't think so, because what I was thinking of was that you should cleave a whetstone with a razor. I want you to chop that rock over there, that particularly hard rock, with a razor.
Nice.
In half, please. And he's like, take them and accomplish what your birds declare is possible. I dare you. And you can see Tarquinius is like smirking in the background going, I've broken augury. Yeah. I'm so going to have those sentries.
No longer shall I have to bother with these worrisome birds.
Yeah, forget bird signals, guys. Yeah. I've got this covered. Unfortunately for Tarquinius, and for the confirmation of the importance of augury in Roman history.
Yeah, doesn't die out.
Well, the augur doesn't even hesitate. He goes up to the whetstone and cuts it in two with a razor, just like that.
Well, I have no questions.
That, my friends, is the power of augury.
And that might be why there are still augurs so many centuries later.
Oh, well, this becomes hugely important. This is like a founding sort of moment for... Because augury itself is associated far more with the Etruscans than it is with the Romans.
Sure.
So...
It's weird that it's like an Etruscan king that's calling it, going, hey.
Yeah.
Prove to me your special powers, Mr. Augur.
Yeah, but he's become a Roman now, so,
true. What was I thinking?
But this is important because this establishes the validity of augury as a way of interpreting signs and approving certain actions and behaviours.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, I have to admit, as a kid, I think from movies, I always got this idea that Romans were somewhat irreligious.
No.
They're really not.
They're actually super, super religious.
Yeah, and quite superstitio.
Yeah, madly.
Yeah. Superstition.
No.
Anyway, we're going down the Stevie Wonder path. I'm sorry. Return to the war with the Sabines.
Well, importantly, taking the auspices.
Yes.
Looking this aspect of augury, which is reading the entrails.
Yeah.
As you do.
Yeah.
Becomes part of standard practice from this point onwards.
Sure. Yeah.
For all things to do with popular assemblies.
Yes.
Mustering the army. So anytime you want to have a big gathering, you've got to take the auspices.
I like the way Livy describes it. Acts of supreme importance. Nothing goes forward if the birds do not consent.
All of this is taking place in that interim period where the Sabines have retreated to think about what's going on. And the Romans are like, let's get our stuff together for this war.
Let's get the birds.
Yeah. Now we've solved this bird issue. Back to the war.
Exactly.
Second battle with the Sabines.
Yes. So they've got, this slightly larger army now. Excellent.
Well, they've got some cavalry. They haven't agreed that they'll add extra sentries. They're just going to double the sentries that they already have.
Yeah, exactly.
So we talked about this.
Yes, indeed.
And now they've got some horses in there.
Yes. And so apparently the Romans sneakily set a fire to a bridge.
Yeah. They have this moment where, the Sabines have crossed the Attius. So to do that, they had to cross a bridge.
Sure.
The Romans are like, I wonder how we can get rid of that bridge.
It's made of wood. What does wood do? Burn.
But this is one of those moments in the narrative where you're like, really? Because the way that Livy describes it, the Romans light a whole bunch of wood and throw it in the river.
Yeah.
And the wood then floats down while on fire.
Exactly. And then it catches on fire.
And then hits the bridge and catches the bridge on fire. And I think to myself, but what about all the wetness of the river?
Yeah. Water putting out fire.
Yes. But, I guess if you'd formed a sort of raft and lit that, and that could do the job.
It does seem quite risky.
There would be ways to do this, but it doesn't seem like a surefire bet. So it's interesting that this is the Romans. Yes. Yeah. But the Romans do it anyway. It's risky.
I thought the same thing. But nonetheless, it leads to Roman triumph.
Yeah, well, the Sabines are routed
Yeah.
on land in the second battle and don't have any way to properly retreat.
Yeah, and so Tarquinius takes that advantage and just really beats them into the ground.
With his cavalry.
Yeah, to the point where they go, please, surrender. And so it's all over. And after this, the Romans get the territory of Galatia. Which will become significant in a later episode, people.
Dun, dun, dun. Hold on to that information, Galatia.
Yeah. And so, after the war, Tarquinius has a triumph, as you do.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
He's all happy with his victory.
Has a triumph. It's very nice. And then, guess what?
War?
It's time for more war.
Get out! I would never expect that. Not a million years. You surprise me constantly.
I know. Being a king is tough.
Yeah. But this time, it is with the Latins again.
Yeah, do the old switcheroo. Well, now we've dealt with the Sabines. Let's get back to that other war we were fighting.
And I like the way that Livy, again, you gotta love Livy for the way he describes things, I think. It's not that there's necessarily a big set-piece battle in this particular war. But apparently, Tarquinius led his army from one town to another until he had subdued the entire Latin race.
Yeah, I mean, Livy basically just gives a list of all of the cities.
Yeah.
And you wonder how formidable the ancient Latins were before. I mean, they were offering some resistance up until this point, but clearly it's the cavalry that's done the trick, I think that's the subtle implied hint here.
The cavalry.
Now you have the
king
cavalry.
for a horse. Yeah.
Nobody can resist us.
Yeah, exactly. That sounds pretty goddamn impressive.
Yeah. I mean, the army sweeps through a whole bunch of places. I could give you the names. Ooh.
Okay.
Corniculium, Ficuliae,
Okay.
Vetus,
Great.
Chimeria,
Fabulous.
Crustumerium.
Loving it.
That's my favourite.
Yeah.
And Mariola,
Okay.
Medallia,
Ah.
and Normentium.
Get out.
Yeah, I know.
Normentium.
I know. You would think they would have held out for longer.
I would have thought so. I know so much about that place.
All of a sudden, the Latins are like, yeah, let's have some peace.
Yeah. And Tarquinius, after all this is over, apparently kind of agrees with them. He decides, I've seen a lot of bad things in this world and I'm somewhat tired of war. I'm going to devote myself to peaceful undertakings.
Also, my wall construction has been interrupted and I'd like to get back to that project.
Yes, that stone wall around the city is mocking me with its incompleteness.
Yes.
Yes.
I've laid like one brick so far. It's very annoying.
Yes.
So he goes back, decides to engage in more peaceful activities, becomes a bit sort of entrepreneurial with his building works.
Yeah, well, presumably, he would have had some more booty after all.
Well, yes.
Conflict, maybe.
Well, one would hope so.
One
so
would
maybe
hope
he's
so.
got some money to splash around, build a new wall.
I thought you were going to talk about draining, and I was like, splash, draining.
Well, I was just about to do that, actually.
Yeah.
He also built sewers around the lowest parts of the city, the forum, and the valleys between the hills.
It excites me deeply.
It's pretty important.
It is.
Rome actually floods almost all the time.
Well, you know what? In
Pretty
sewage,
regularly.
I have to admit, I don't think I'd like to live in a city without sewage. I'm on board with sewers.
The Romans are with you with this.
Yeah, hygiene.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, we're talking open sewers, so you might not be
still.
super excited, but better than no sewers at all.
Exactly, yeah, like flooding, disease, mushiness, not a fan.
Yeah, malaria.
Yeah, exactly. I'd rather my city be malaria-free.
Importantly, just to give it a slightly religious bent.
Are you going towards the king of the gods?
Or, yes.
Yeah.
You've preempted me.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. We know where this is going.
Yes.
He lays the foundations for the temple of Jupiter on the Capitale. So Capitoline Jupiter.
Yeah, very important.
Becomes hugely important as we progress through Roman history from the founding of the city. But this is a temple that he owes the gods because he vowed to build it during the Sabine War.
Yes. Yeah, so it's kind of like fulfilling his vow because you don't want to make the gods angry.
Yes, if you say you're going to do something for the gods, you really do have to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Now, there has been some interesting developments going on in the king's own household, I believe.
Yeah, well, he's been away for a while. And but yes, I think we should switch to a more domestic focus.
Yes, because in the household of Tarquinius, there apparently had been a boy named Servius Tullius.
Auspicious?
Or Servius.
Servius.
Which I feel like I'm a fud when I say that, so I'm not going to. Yes, and he apparently was living in the house of the king. And while he was there, his head apparently just burst on fire one day while he was taking a nap.
Yeah. As you do.
Yes, indeed.
Spontaneous combustion.
Yes. And a lot of people saw this. It wasn't just him. Wasn't like
Turns out there were a bunch of people watching him nap.
Yeah, yes, exactly. This random boy. Yeah. And it wasn't like he woke up and went, feeling rather warm. Other people noticed it, and then he woke up and it went away.
Yeah, and he's not damaged by this at all. So,
of course.
This is a sign.
Yes. The Queen, who, if you are a keen listener and you listen to our previous episode, you'll know that the Queen of Tarquinius is rather on the ball with the prophecies and the auguries, and
she's quite interested in all of that stuff. She's got a bit of a knack for it.
Yeah.
So while the flames are still present around the head of Servius Tullius napping, some of the servants rush off to get some water to put the fire out. Yeah. As you do. That seems like a reasonable thing.
I would think so, yeah.
She doesn't let them do that.
No.
She's like, no.
This is a sign that one day this child shall protect the royal house in a time of trouble. Sorry. I don't think she said it quite like that.
No, I don't think she did either. No, perhaps not.
But I wanted it to sound eerie.
Yeah. So, Tanaquil is sort of she grabs Tarquinius and she's like, look, I think this is an important sign.
Yes.
I think he's going to be a light for us in trouble and perplexity.
Yes.
A protection for our house.
Therefore, let's keep this boy close to us.
Yes.
And let us treat him as a son.
Let's take good care of him.
Indeed. Let us educate him as a great man.
As if he were our own boy.
Exactly, yes. And it's lucky that they did, because it turns out, apparently, young Servius is quite naturally gifted with a royal nature.
Oh yeah, he turns out to be a really good kid.
Yeah.
He's got the knack for it.
Yeah, of course he does.
Yeah, Tarquinius sort of really gets on board with this. He's like, look, I love this kid like he's my own son.
Yep.
And he to the point where he actually betroths Servius to his own daughter, his natural born daughter.
Ooh, a sign.
Marry him into the family.
Indeed.
He's a good sort. I like him.
Yes, indeed. There are some people who are not too happy about the advancement of young Servius, however.
Well, and partly this is to do with the fact that in some people's eyes, he's actually just a slave.
Yes, well, this is the thing. His name, Servius, is it just a clever name? Yeah. Now, many historians I have read have pointed out that just because his name is Servius does not mean he's a slave. Yeah, exactly.
There's an extra letter in there. Yeah. It's important.
Yeah. Could mean that. Could. But not necessarily. For example, later on, there is an emperor called Galba who also has that praenomen. He was definitely not a slave.
Yeah, but names and slippage and meaning change over time.
Yeah, well, exactly. I'm just saying, not everyone who had that name was a slave. So there's a lot of debate about, was he from slave stock, was he not? We might get into that in more detail in our next episode when we're actually looking at, gave it away. Servius himself. What? I know, I just dropped that bombshell like it was nothing. I'm sorry about that.
I'm devastated.
Yeah.
I can't even talk right now.
I know, I'm sorry. But, anyway, backing track, or track backing, whatever. Basically, he possibly is not from distinguished stock, and he certainly is not, strictly speaking, part of the royal house.
No, strictly speaking.
No. And so, there are some men around.
There are a couple of gentlemen around.
Yes.
You may recall, there are a couple of leftover sons of Ancus Marcius.
Dun, dun, dun.
Those boys that were sent off on that hunting trip.
Yeah, it turns out
when they
were...
could have been at the Comitia lobbying for their own kingship.
Yeah. Turns out they weren't actually all that happy with the way things had turned out.
Well, they've been around the whole time in the background and maybe keeping a bit of a low profile, but also under the assumption that at the end of Tarquinius' reign,
it kind of revert back to them. Yeah.
They will get their chance.
Yes.
And they're like, well, maybe we are a bit young, we'll wait it out.
Cool,
but it becomes clear from the privileging of Servius in Tarquinius' household and the marriage to the daughter
that maybe it's not going to happen.
Maybe, and the kingly disposition thing that's been thrown around. Servius has got...
That would just really rile you up.
This is a man with the right stuff, and they're like, this is not
cool.
the way we want this to play out.
Not again.
No. We've already been gypped once.
Yeah.
And we've been patiently waiting.
Yeah.
No, we don't wait a second time.
And so they
form a plan. As you do.
But they're not going to do it themselves.
No,
that would be ridiculous. Yeah. So instead, they look around and think, those young shepherds over there seem desperate. Why don't we hire them to carry out our evil plan?
You wouldn't want to get your own hands dirty because let's face it, if the king is decided through the Comitia and a voting process and is endorsed by the Senate, really having the blood on your own hands
it's not going to look good.
Going to be a problem.
Kind of, I think, would disqualify you.
Yeah. So they hire 2 shepherds. They're like, dudes, like, this is the deal.
Yeah.
The shepherds are sort of poor enough and desperate enough that they say yes to the plan.
Yeah. And so basically they show up at the king's residence. And
they get into a fight with each other.
And they start saying, we need the king here to sort this out. Someone get the king.
Us shepherds can't solve this for ourselves.
Yes, exactly.
So they put on a good show, draw the attention outside the palace.
Yep.
Let into the palace.
Yep. And the king, randomly enough, does show up.
Well, the king is there.
Yeah.
They appeal for the king.
Yeah.
They argue a lot in front of the king.
Yeah.
The lictors of the king end up restraining the shepherds at certain points. So it's getting physical.
Rather heated.
Yeah, very heated.
And while the king is sort of listening to one person, or one shepherd,
Tarquinius is like, settle guys, I'll listen to one side at a time.
Yeah.
You, shepherd number 1, tell me your side of the story.
Yeah. And while he's going, the other one sneakily takes out an axe and hits him
in the head with an axe.
Yeah.
So Rome.
We were thinking we might pause there. I'm guessing you probably know where this is going, but nonetheless, you never know.
But wait.
Yeah.
No, you don't know where this is going, guys. This is a suspenseful moment.
No. You have no idea.
Yeah. None. Exactly.
A blow to the head with an axe could mean anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There are no guarantees. This is a cliffhanger.
Yes.
We will leave it there.
Okay.
Tarquinius has an axe in his head.
Yep.
You can imagine
Shepherds
that for yourself.
Yep.
Shepherds are arguing.
Yep.
There
are evil plans.
There are some people in the background who are playing with the strings of those shepherds.
Exactly. And a man of the royal nature wandering around with his head on fire.
Yes.
While he sleeps.
Yes. What could it all mean?
Ooh, join us next time.
We'll find out the answers in our very next episode.